Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Jamie Photography. This video I've actually done for a webinar for Serge Raminelli's Academy, and he asked me kindly to step in. He was on one of his workshops in Europe and wasn't able to cover, and he kindly asked me to step in. So this video has been done for Serge. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this day to night. Wonderful place, Montmartre in Paris. This is the Basilica. I'm going to take you through from the original shot, which is here. As you can see, it's a little bit distorted. I have applied a little bit of perspective correction on this shot, and then we're going to turn it into this nighttime shot, and I'm going to take you through all the steps of how to achieve that and create this moonlit effect. Now the raw file for this is the link down below in the comments, so feel free to download and follow along. All I ask is that you respect my copyright, and if you do repost this image, please give me credit, Jamie Mathlin. That would be much appreciated. If you do enjoy the video, I'd love you to click like, and if you haven't already subscribed, it'd be wonderful for you to join my adventure here on YouTube and subscribe. But more important than all of that, really love your comments, love your questions, and also if you've got tips on how we can improve what we're doing, please put them in the comments down below. So let's get started. So as you can see, the raw image that I shot here is 1/1000th of a second, f9, ISO 200, and I've shot the full 16mm as wide as the lens would go. That does mean that we've got quite a pull on the perspective towards the higher part of the frame, and I'll show you shortly how we deal with that, bring that back so the perspective is correct. What you'll also notice is that the image itself is also falling inwards from left to right, again due to the 16mm wide perspective, and we will correct that as well. But one thing I just wanted to pick up on was, if you note that the camera height is actually sort of level with the lamps here in this shot, and let me just raise the brightness slightly so we can see everything. And how I did this was I placed the camera on top of my tripod, extended my tripod to its full height, about 6 feet, about 1.8 meters, and then set a timer for 10 seconds and lifted the tripod literally above my head as far as I could. So the camera itself was about 3 meters, probably around about 12 feet in the air, and I let it take the shot with the timer. And with a 1/1000th of a second shutter speed, I wasn't too worried about camera shake. And to be honest, we don't really have any. If I zoom in here, you'll see that the image, even if we go 200%, you'll see that the image is very sharp. So no issues with that at all. So before we do anything, I'm going to go straight for the denoise function. Even though we shot at ISO 200, which is pretty low, the denoise function still has an incredible capability of reducing the noise still further, and there is a little bit of noise there when we zoom right in at 200%. So I'm going to click on denoise. We're going to allow that to load up, and then I'm just going to select 50%, which is fine, and I'm going to create a stack, so this image effectively will go behind the image that we're using, and I will click enhance, and you'll see up in the top corner here that it's creating the new DNG using the denoise function. And it does take a little bit of time. These 61 megapixel images have an awful lot of data to process, so it sort of has to work its way through and sort things out. What we're going to do with this shot, as I said earlier, is we're going to take it to a day to night. We're going to use the Generative Fill function and the Remove Tool function to just tidy up the image as well, and we're going to create a moonlit scene of the Basilica in Montmartre in Paris, which should come out pretty good. So I'm looking forward to working through this one. So we're just getting towards the end of the denoise. There we go, that's complete, and yeah, the noise levels have definitely been decreased there. So it's probably difficult to see with the YouTube algorithm. It's probably not as sharp as it looks to me on the screen here, but that's effectively done. So we need to decide what we're going to do with the perspective. The first thing I'm going to do is drop down to transform. I'm not going to go to auto. It doesn't work as well as it used to, particularly for these much wider scenes. I'm going to go straight for guided, and then I'm going to take two of the left and right parts of the image to straighten it. So I'm going to go to this pillar on the left here, and I'm just going to pull that up using the magnifying screen to get the edge of that pillar, and then I'm going to go over to this pillar on the gate over here, and I'm going to take the top there and the bottom. So I'm just literally clicking at the top, holding that left key down and letting go, and there we go. So we've now got this parallel and this parallel. You can use a horizontal as well if you want to bring things true, but I'm happy with this line falling away. It gives us a bit of depth. So what I'm also going to do just before we go over into Photoshop is I'm just going to open up the shadows. There we go, almost all the way, and I'm just going to bring the highlights down to bring that sky back into play, because we're going to, once we've gone into Photoshop, we'll come back into Lightroom, but it will be a TIFF file then, not a DNG. So what I'm also going to do is just back off the clarity slightly, just to take away the sharpness of the full contrast from high shadows, low highlights. Just going to check my whites and my blacks. You can hold down the Alt or Option key and move the slider to see where your whites and your blacks are as such. But what I like to do is just hold down the Shift key and double click the word white and double click the word black, and that will give you your limits. I'm just going to back that white off a little bit because it's a bit too far, so I'm going to bring that down to about 30. And that's where we're going to go. So let's take it over into Photoshop. So we're going to right click on the image. Let me just accept the transform function, and then we're going to right click, edit in. Now I'm running the Adobe Photoshop beta version at the moment because that's where the Generative Fill currently sits, but the remove tool is now moved to the main edition of Photoshop. So we're going to go into here, and then we're going to go across into Photoshop, and this is where it is. So firstly, I want to try to fill these gaps. We probably won't use them. We'll probably crop in a little bit, but to do that, I'm literally going to go straight to select the polygon lasso tool. If you right click, it's behind the lasso tool. You can freehand if you want to, but I quite like to use the polygon lasso tool because you can literally draw a line. So we need a little bit of overhang into this area here. So I'm just going to click once. I'm going to go up here like this, and then you can draw around the outside to make sure you get the area that you want. There we go. And then I'm going to click Generative Fill. Now, if this little box here at the bottom is not on the screen, you can go to Window, and you can click Contextual Text Bar, Taskbar. Here it is here, and that will switch it on for you. So we're just going to click Generative Fill. We're not going to write any text. We're just going to click Generate. Now, this sends the information off to Adobe, where it's processed on Adobe servers, and then it sends the information back. Now, hopefully, when we get the Generative Fill function moved into the full edition of Photoshop, that will run locally, so that we can use the power of the processors we have these days to move things forward. But let's be honest, 15 seconds is not a great deal of time to wait. So there we go. It's put that piece back in. It's done a nice fill there. I'm going to do the same on this side. So I'm just going to click up here, take a line down there, and then just go around, clicking around here. And then we'll do the same again, Generative Fill, Generate, and we'll fill the right hand side in. Now once this is done, I'm just going to go in and tidy up any other little things here that we want to change. There's a bench at the bottom with a little head of a person in there, and there's also a person inside the covered area, and we'll get those cleaned up as well. So let's just let that finish. There we go, that's pretty good. There's a little bit of a white line there, so we get three options. So I can right click there to see what other options there? I think I'm going to go with number 3. I'm going to say I like that one. That's good. Okay, we're going to zoom in, and let's take this. Let's zoom in at the bottom here. Use the space bar to move the image, and we just want to take this out here. So remove tool will work well for that. So you need to go down to the base layer if you're going to use remove tool. You can't do it over the top of any of the generative layers. Make it a little bit bigger by using the square brackets to the left of the return key, and I'm just going to paint that a little bit out there, and remove tool will calculate what needs to be done, and it will remove it for us. There we go. Okay, that's clear. So let's move over here, and there's a gentleman inside here. We're going to zoom in on him. We're going to select the remove tool again, take a slightly smaller tool this time, and just overlap ever so slightly around the individual, and just make sure that you get all of him covered. There we go. And then when I let go, the remove tool will do its magic and take that out. I did notice that there is some graffiti here, so again we can use the remove tool here just to take this mess away. Even the most beautiful cities in the world still have people that choose to make a mess, which is a shame, but there we go. The wonders of remove tool, just to take away some of these elements. I did also notice that there was some graffiti on the light here, so I'm also going to just use the remove tool to paint that out as well. There we go, missed a little bit there. Super. Right, let's go along to the end, and oops, didn't mean to do that. So I was looking over here, I did see a sign which I didn't like too much, so I'm just going to take that out there. And this Harris fencing that's outside, really not that pleasant to see, a little bit distracting. So let's have a go with Generative Fill to see if we can remove that as well. So we're going to go into the polygon tool here. I'm going to start on the edge of the wall here. There we go. And because it's the polygon tool, we can literally draw nice straight lines around the Harris fencing. So we want to keep the wall in the shot. So we're just sort of coming around the edge of the wall there, staying nice and tight to the edge of the wall. And just going to go down and across, and then underneath that Harris, and then come straight across to here and back up the side of that pillar. So what you'll notice is that we've just drawn this square on the area we want removed, and the light fitting itself runs straight through. As a result, I'm hoping that the Generative Fill tool will actually put this part of the lamp back in whilst removing that. So let's give it a go. So we'll click Generative Fill, we'll click Generate. We're not going to write any text in the box, and we're going to allow it to try to compute the removal of this Harris fencing. So and this tool, I must admit, does astound me every time. There we go. There's option 1. There was a road outside there, but now there's grass. Let's have a look at option 2. That's not too bad. And option 3, well, there's the road and the path that was outside there back. So I'm happy with that one. I'm going to say yes, I like that one, to number 3, and we can go from there. So let's zoom back out a little bit. Let's just make sure we've got everything else whilst we're in here. Before we do the perspective, let's just make sure we've got everything out of the way. There's they have a tendency in France to have metal poles just strapped to things, and they run their fiber optic cables literally from pole to pole. So we're just going to we're going to try and remove that. We're going to use the remove tool again, and we're going to go bring these 2 layers together and just click merge, so that we've always got the base layer. And I'm going to take the remove tool here. I'm going to click, and then just going to oops, went a bit offline there. I'm going to click at the top there, and then I'm just going to draw down, there we go, onto that pole. And then we're going to take a slightly smaller brush to follow this this wire just across here to remove it, and it goes all the way across here, look. So just get as far as I can see, let that do the work to remove it. Give it a moment. There we go. It's left a bit of a line there, so you can just draw across with the remove tool to put those back. If you do see a little blur across an area, you can just do that. You see here there's a little bit blurred here, so we can actually just go back in there and just paint over, and it will put the lines back in. So last bit of that wire there we see just crossing there, so we'll take that out as well. Excellent. This post is also there. Just take that out. I know we're going to perhaps too much detail, but I do like to try to get things looking nice. So if you do end up with a good image, and you do decide you want to blow it up and print it larger, then you've already got rid of all the little details, which is pretty good. So yeah, I'm happy that we've got pretty well everything out the scene now. Yep. So what we're going to do now is we're going to deal with the perspective. So I'm just going to put that back to fit screen. So because of the wide angled lens, it is pulling away at the top, and as you can see with these domes, they're actually stretched. They should be more of a standard curve. So how we're going to deal with this is we're going to go to edit, and we're going to go to perspective warp. Really great function, this. Now when you first start, you think, well, what do I do? Because you've clicked into it, but you'll note you'll have a layout and a warp button at the top here, and an accept or redo. In layout, we effectively have to set up boxes that we're going to use to actually alter the perspective. So the top box, I'm going to literally start in this top corner here, and I'm going to bring this box across from one side to the other, and I want the box to be at the bottom of the dome. So you can see there that it's just at the bottom of those domes. Then I'm going to bring a second box up from the bottom, which will join with this box. Here we go. So now we have two boxes, a top box and a bottom box. And now we can click on warp. And when we're on warp, we can actually move any of the buttons that you can see around the edges. So I can bring this down, for example, on the right hand side, and I can literally just warp the image down like that. But I want to keep the perspective equal from left to right, so I'll bring this side down as well to the same level. There we go. And now the dome is the correct shape, and the main spire of the Basilica is not too high. I'm not going to change anything with the bottom because the perspective is correct there. So I'm just going to click the tick mark, the check mark here, and it will render that for us. There we go, that's done. Now I can go straight to the crop tool, and I can recrop down into this area. And I'm just going to bring it across a little bit from the right there, just to about there. I think I'm going to bring a little bit off of this side as well, just inside that bench there. Press enter to accept. Okay, great. So we've got the crop where we want. We've got everything removed that we want removed. Just going to have a quick look over here, see what this box is. That's a pillar of a wall, which is absolutely fine. So we're going to throw it back into Lightroom, and we're going to process it. Now we've removed everything we want, we're going to process it from a day to a night shot. So I'm going to go to File, Close, and Save. And once that's saved, we can go back to Lightroom. Here it is. So ready for the day to night treatment. So we've got the perspective as we want it, and we're going to go now to start the day to night process. So to do that, what I always do is drop down the exposure, sometimes by 2 stops, sometimes by 2.5 stops. I'm going to go here to 2.5. If you want to get an exact number, you can always click on that box and put in minus 2.5, enter, and it will do it for you. To get a nighttime shot, it's not just about reducing the the amount of light that you have. It's also about creating that nighttime look. And the moon is very mono with its color. The reflected light from the moon only reflects in certain frequencies, so you get quite a sort of bluish, very almost monochrome look at night. Whereas the sun, of course, is a full spectrum, and therefore all colors are reflected. So to mimic that, what we do is we actually reduce the temperature down, make the whole scene bluer. Here we go, like that. So there I've gone -37, but we have to desaturate. So what we do is take saturation down. There we go. So in this case, I've gone to -50, and as you can see, you get that sort of monochrome, that sort of nighttime look. Just going to add a little bit of vibrance just to make it pop a little tiny bit. Now, to get the moon effect with the sky, I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast, not too much. What you can do is you can, I'm going to select the sky with a mask, and I'm going to add a little bit more contrast to the sky. Sorry, that was exposure, apologies. Contrast to the sky. There we go. Quite a big chunk of contrast, and I'm just going to bring down the exposure just a little bit more, and I'm just going to open up the shadow just a little bit, so you get a cast across the sky. Now, what we're going to do to create moonlight in the sky is we're going to create a new mask, a new radial gradient, and we're going to take quite a large radial gradient into this scene, and we're going to put the moon coming through this gap here in the tree. So I'm just going to put quite a large radial gradient coming across the sky, and I'm just going to bring up the exposure ever so gradually. There we go. And what you'll find with the moon is at night, particularly if there's clouds in the sky, which there is in this scene, the light gets diffused through the clouds. So we can just bring up the highlights like that, add a little bit of contrast again. Now the real key is we want to right click on this particular radial gradient and duplicate the mask. Okay, but this time we're going to make this new one smaller, so you get this sort of glow in the sky where the moon would be, as you can see there. So that's the same brightness. We could probably even bring up the brightness just a little bit more, not too much. But what we do want to do is remove the tree from this scene. So we can do that by subtracting, okay, the sky, and then clicking in invert. And you'll see there you get a little bit of glow coming through from the first mask, but the second mask is not burning it through. It's brighter there. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click one more time, duplicate that mask, and then I'm going to put a much smaller one in, which is actually now going to be effectively the size of the moon that would be in the scene. Here we go. I'm probably going to go even just a little bit smaller. That's it. And it's using that same mask. So if we click away now, you can see that the moon is effectively in the sky and it's casting light on the buildings. And we'll come back and we'll deal with these buildings in a little while to get the amount of light onto the surface of the buildings looking about right. But what I do want to do now is I want to bring these lights on, these lanterns on. So we're going to zoom in onto the lantern. There we go. Zoom in there, and I'm just going to move that up. And we're going to do my standard day to night approach for lighting lanterns, which is to take a mask, a radial gradient, and we take that radial gradient just slightly bigger than the lantern itself. There we go. We bring exposure up to maximum. I'm going to add some color in, quite a bit of color all the way, and balance that color off with a little bit of magenta. There we go. And I'm also going to add just a little bit of saturation there just to get the color looking about right. We're going to subtract a brush, and that brush is going to be zero feather, 100% float, because it's a minus brush. Make it a little bit bigger, and we're just going to go alongside here. We're going to click once, there we go, to remove, and then I'm going to hold the shift key down and click again, and I'm just going to work my way around the lamp by doing that same thing. So click, shift, click, and then click, shift, click, and you can see there that's what I've painted. I'll make my brush bigger, and I will go around the outside of that without going over the lantern. If you do make a mistake and you do cut in onto it by mistake like that, you can always Command Z or Control Z on a Windows to undo it. To see that you've got all of the mask removed, you can go to the mask window and hover over it, and you can see where the mask remains, and there is just a little bit in there and down there. I also want to put this framing of the lantern itself back in, so I'm going to click there once, maybe using a smaller brush, shift click, and I can put that line in there. Right, and in fact I'm going to go back one. I'm going to just back off the flow to about 50% and do that again because it was a bit too dark. So click there once, shift click, there we go, that's better. Now the real trick to this is you've got to click on the radial gradient you've got, right click and duplicate the mask again, click on that mask and now make it smaller, and this will be the lantern inside the lamp itself. Just got to back the brightness off just a little bit, there we go, and that gives you that lantern look, which is what we want. So just going to zoom back out, and we're going to put the light in that spreads from this lantern now. So we're going to go back into masks, create a new radial gradient, and we're going to place quite a large radial gradient with the base of the lantern where the light will be coming from. And we need to rotate the radial gradient. Everybody tends to put these in and keep them relatively straight, and they never look natural. And if you look at the pane of glass, the light would be coming out this way. So I'm just going to put that in at a slight rotation. Now when we bring up the exposure for this area now, you'll see that it will light that area as though the lantern is actually lighting it. So I'm going to bring it up to about that sort of brightness. We can change it again in a little while, but I'm just going to bring up the temp as well. So we've got the temp color that we wanted, that sort of incandescent light, and I'm going to balance that off with a little bit of magenta just so it looks about right. Now the key to lighting is that you really do need to add some contrast. There we go, not too much, and clarity, because a single light source has huge amounts of contrast, and the clarity allows you to pick that up. So if I just add in some clarity now, you'll see that really does pop in that area there. In fact, I might even add just a little bit more in, 60 there. Now it's a bit bright now because I've added that clarity in, so I can just back it off a little bit. There we go, and that works really, really well, sort of lighting into this area. So now the other thing that you'll note from here is that this lantern would also light these plants up behind it. So I'm gonna take go back into masks. I'm going to take this one we've done down the bottom here, this radial filter, and I'm going to radial gradient, sorry, and duplicate this mask. Okay, and then I'm going to move this up. Right, now the key here is, if you look at the bottom of this lantern, it's out from this wall about a meter, about 3 feet. So therefore the light would be brightest in that sort of 3 feet, 1 meter back at the same angle. So it would be in this position here, and of course it would be straight. So I'm just going to bring that straight there. Bring that down just a little bit. There we go. And I'm making it a little bit smaller because it wouldn't light so far. Now, of course, it's too bright, so we just need to back off the brightness so it looks more natural. There we go. Now, the real key to this is that when you look at the, let me zoom in, you'll notice that the lantern itself has now gone, let me just close the mask there, has now gone too bright because this radial gradient has come over it. So you have a choice. You can either subtract this from the radial behind, or the easiest way I find is just to go back into the previous mask, this one here, and just back off the brightness. So you compensate for that extra brightness that's coming from behind, and that makes it look natural again. So that's pretty good. So I'm just going to move down to the next one. So I'm going to copy this one. So right click, duplicate the mask, and then I'm going to take that down here, and we're going to use that to light this one. Of course, this is further away, so it will be smaller. The angle's slightly different. There we go, because the lamp's further out. There we go. And this one needs to be less bright, and I'll show you why. If we go back to the fit, you'll see that that's the same brightness that this one was, but because it's further away, the optical illusion, just close that there, makes it look brighter. But I just copied the same one over. We didn't change anything. That is an optical illusion. So what we need to do is we need to reduce the brightness of that mask there. So let me just, this one, there we go. So we're just going to reduce that down a little bit further so it matches. There we go. And that one's slightly redder again because it's further away. You get a slightly different optical effect. So I'm just going to back off the color slightly just to get the balance where we want it. There's also a lantern over here, so we're going to right click on that one, duplicate that mask again, and then we're going to pop it underneath this light, rotate it a little bit more, a little bit smaller. There we go. And then we're going to have a look at it without the mask in the way. It's a little bit bright because again it's further away. So we're going to select that and we're just going to bring down that brightness just a little bit further. There we go. So let's light these lanterns up here. So we can take a copy of the radial gradient we used for this lantern, and we'll just take that, make that a little bit bigger so we can move it away, and we'll take that over here. Using the space bar to move back again, just going to move that to position. I'm going to zoom in a bit closer. We're going to go 200%. And we're going to place this one as we did with the other one. We're just going to place it in the center there, boost the brightness to 100%, subtract the brush, make the brush a little bit bigger, and then do the same thing. We're just going to go click, shift click. We need to bring the flow up to 100%. There we go. Click, shift click, just to work your way around the lantern so that you've effectively masked out all the areas that are not required. It's only the lantern itself. Make the brush a little bit bigger, hover over just to make sure we've got it all. A little bit left there, a little bit left there. There we go. And remember to put in the little one. It's going to come in a bit closer still. So, and then we'll back off the flow to 50%, and then click, shift click to fill that line in. Now remember to duplicate, so click on that one, right click, duplicate, and then we'll put the lantern inside. There we go. And we're just going to make that a little bit less bright. Perfect. So we also need to, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. What we also need to do is light up over here. So we're going to take a copy of this one here, right click, duplicate. There we go. And we're going to move that up. Now look at the base of this lamp. It is quite a long way away from those plants. That light is actually over here. That's actually where it's landing. So we're just going to straighten that up, make it a little bit smaller, just a little bit more. There we go. We've got a couple of lanterns out here, so we just need to light those up as well. So I'm just going to zoom back in again. We'll take a copy of that one, right click, duplicate the mask, and then we can take this over this way here. Now as they get further away, you don't need to put quite so much detail in them because they are quite small now, so we can actually just use the radial gradient as a single item and bring the brightness right the way up, and it works quite well for more distant ones because they're a lot darker. So I've just duplicated that again. Because they're further away, you effectively don't need to put quite so much detail in. There we go. Now what we do need to do is just add a little bit of light along these buildings here, because this street lamp is out here. So I'm going to take this big radial gradient here, duplicate that again. I'm going to put it up here on the wall of those buildings, just turn it to an angle, drop that brightness away, but just picking up a little bit of light on that area there. And it will also, if I close the mask, it will also light these up a little bit better as well, as you can see. So let's drop back. I think we're looking pretty good with those lights in there. I don't want to make them too contrasty. Just going to click on that one and just reduce the contrast a little bit. No, a bit too contrasty there. Just back it off. And that's the nice thing. You can go back to each one, pick one out, and actually just change it again. Now I need to add a little bit of light into this area, as though there's a light fitting off the scene here. So we're going to right click, duplicate this mask, grab this mask again, and I'll maybe put it over here, and we'll bring it in at a slight angle, slightly bigger, and that just sort of suggests that there's a light just out of shot over here. That works quite well. We can even do that again, duplicate the mask, and we could bring it down into this area here, and actually maybe light the grass a little bit, bring that exposure up a bit more. You can actually create the effect of light coming in from those lower areas. Just adds more to your foreground. Let's just duplicate that again. Just need to bring that back onto this. There we go. Duplicate the mask again, and then we'll put one over here, as though this area has been lit, but not quite so bright. We'll dim that one down a little bit more. There we go. Just adds a little bit more to the foreground. Gives you a little bit more fill. That was probably a little bit too bright. Just back that off a little bit as well. There we go. So the last things we want to do is just finish off with the moonlight on the buildings here. And let me show you a little technique here. We're going to create a mask, and we're going to use object, and we're going to select this part of the basilica here just by drawing over the actual building itself in object mask. And then we just come round like that, fill that in, and what the mask will do is it will select for us the building. There we go. Now I don't want to brighten the whole building because the moon's over here to the left. I want to create brightness on the left hand side, so I'm going to go to the object up in the mask box, go to the three dots, click on that, intersect with a linear gradient, and then I'm going to place a linear gradient on that side of the church, you see. But I want the line here to be level with the moon, so I'm just going to turn that. There we go. So you can see that the majority of the light would hit this side, and then we're going to bring up the exposure just a little bit. There we go, on that side, a little bit of contrast. Probably go a little bit brighter, as though the moon is hitting that side of the buildings. But we've got a little bit of a glow that's appeared around the buildings. We can get rid of that by subtracting the sky from that. There we go. You see that's got rid of that. And now we've got this brighter edge, brighter building here. In fact, we could probably even go a little bit brighter, as though that moon is really pushing down on this side. It's a bit bright down here, so we can also subtract a brush. We can select 100% feather and maybe 30-40% flow, and with a negative brush we can just brush over and just take that brightness down just a little bit, as you can see there, just so it's not quite so bright on that part of the building. We can do the same with the main tower here. We can create a mask, go to objects, we can draw in this part of the building here. We go, fill in the gap, and that will select that building for us. We can go to the three dots in the object, intersect this with a linear gradient, and we can do the same thing again. We can add in a gradient of light coming from the moon. We can make it a little bit brighter, not too bright, add in some contrast. And it's just sort of lighting up, the moon's lighting it up. And just remember to subtract the sky just to take away the edge. That's it. So I'm just going to come out of the masks. I'm pretty happy with that. I think we're pretty close to a finished image. I'm just going to go down to effects at the bottom here and put in a post-crop vignette just to darken that down about -20, and then remember to open the feather up when you do that. And then the last things we're going to do, we're going to go back to the basic functions, and we're just going to do the final adjustments here. So I think we'll open up the shadows a little bit more. There we go. Might bring down the highlights just a little bit more there. And then go to our whites, hold down the Option or Alt key on a window. Just find where that white is going to be, about +5. And then same with the blacks, just check we've got a little bit of black in the shot there. And then finally, I'm just going to brighten the whole image ever so slightly and desaturate just a little bit more to get that moonlight effect. That's probably a little bit bright. We can add a little bit of contrast in. Still a little bit bright. There we go. And the very last thing, I just want to darken this top corner. So I'm going to go back into the mask there, create a new mask, a new linear gradient. I'm going to pull it in from the top like so. I just want to get this area darkened down. I'm going to darken that down, add a little bit more blue into it. But I don't want to darken the tree. So I'm going to subtract the sky. So we can select the sky and then click invert. So the tree still keeps the light from the moon coming on it, but the sky's darkened down over in this side. And that, I think is a wrap. I think we've got where we wanted to be. A day tonight at the Basilica at Montmartre in Paris. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, click like down below. And if you haven't subscribed, it'd be great for you to join my adventure here on YouTube. But I think for now we're all done. So bye-bye.